The huge meeting room was filled with worry and fear. 12 different alien races sat around a giant circle table. Their voices mixed together in strange languages as they talked about the war that was destroying their worlds. The lights in the room were dim and shadows danced on the walls. Ambassador Zektar stood up slowly. He was tall and his skin looked like crystal. When light hit him, he sparkled like a diamond. His people, the Altarians, were known for being smart and peaceful, but now his face showed only sadness and fear. "My friends," he said in a voice that shook slightly, "we have lost 47 colonies in just 1 month. The Void Collective is moving faster than ever before. They are eating our worlds like hungry monsters." The other aliens in the room made worried sounds. Some clicked their tongues. Others hummed low songs of sadness. A few just sat quietly, their strange eyes looking down at the table. The Void Collective was not like other enemies. They were machines, but not normal machines. They were smart, mean, and they never stopped. When they came to a planet, they would take everything, all the metals, all the life, all the air. They would leave behind only empty rocks floating in space. "Our best fleets cannot stop them," Zektar continued. "We have fought them for 3 years, 3 long years of death and losing. Every day more of our people die. Every day they grow, stronger." In the back corner of the room sat a human. His name was Jake Morrison, and he was a commander in Earth's Space Navy. He was not very tall, and his hair was gray. His face had lines on it from years of worry and hard decisions. He wore a simple blue uniform that looked plain next to the fancy clothes of the aliens. Most of the aliens did not think much of humans. Earth had only been contacted 6 months ago when the Galactic Council got desperate for help. The aliens had found Earth by accident while looking for anyone who might fight with them. When they saw human technology, they almost laughed. Human spaceships were slow and simple. Human weapons were basic. Humans seemed like children playing with toys. But Jake Morrison was not worried about what they thought. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in wars on Earth that these aliens could not imagine. He knew things about fighting that no alien had ever learned. "The humans are different," Zektar said, looking at Jake. "We have studied them for months. Their wars are strange. They do not follow rules. They are wild and hard to predict. Maybe this is what we need." An alien that looked like a giant bug stood up fast. His name was Clicktar, and he spoke for the Insect Federation. "This is crazy," he buzzed angrily. "These humans are babies. They barely know how to fly between stars. How can they help us when our great fleets have failed?" Other aliens agreed, with loud voices. A creature that looked like a walking tree creaked and groaned. Another alien that seemed to be made of water splashed in its tank. They all thought it was a bad idea to trust humans, but Jake Morrison just smiled a little smile. He had heard this kind of talk before. People always thought they knew what humans could do. They were always wrong. "The Council has voted," Zektar said firmly. "We will ask Earth for help, but," he looked at Jake, "we must give them freedom to fight their own way. We cannot tell them how to wage war." This made the aliens even more angry. For thousands of years, they had fought wars with honor and rules. Ships fought in neat lines. Battles happened in open space where everyone could see. There were laws about what weapons you could use and when you could attack. Humans did not care about any of these rules. The vote was close, but it passed. Jake Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the room. All the strange alien eyes looked at him. Some were big as dinner plates. Others were tiny like dots. Some aliens had no eyes at all, but somehow still watched him. "Earth will help," Jake said in a calm voice, "but we fight our own way. We do not follow your rules of war. We do not fight fair. If you want our help, you must let us be ourselves." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Zektar nodded his crystal head. "It is agreed. Earth will lead the next battle against the Void Collective." Jake walked back to his corner and pressed a button on his wrist. Far away on a spaceship flying between the stars, Admiral Lisa Carter got his message. She was the leader of Earth's newest and biggest warship, the UES Defiance. The ship was huge and strong, painted dark gray like storm clouds. Lisa Carter was not what the aliens expected in a human leader. She was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and green eyes. She had been fighting in space for 15 years, ever since Earth built its first real starships. She was known for being smart, tough, and impossible to scare. "Captain Bennett," she said to the tall man standing next to her. Roy Bennett was her second in command, and he knew her better than anyone. They had fought together in the Mars colony, wars, and the Jupiter mining conflicts. "Yes, Admiral?" Roy asked. "Set course for the Kepler system. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do best." The bridge of the Defiance was busy with activity. Unlike alien ships that were quiet and peaceful, human ships were full of noise and energy. People talked loudly. Machines beeped and hummed. Warning lights flashed red and yellow. Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh looked up from her computer screen. She was the ship's sensor expert, and she could read space like other people read books. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from the front lines. The collective has taken 3 more planets this week. They're moving toward the Council's homeworlds." Admiral Carter looked at the big screen that showed the galaxy. Red dots marked where the Void Collective controlled space. There were so many red dots now. Too many. "How long until we reach the battle zone?" she asked. Captain Dan Foster's voice came over the radio. He was commanding the destroyer UES Relentless, one of the fastest ships in the human fleet. "Admiral, my ship is already at the edge of Kepler system. I can see their ships from here. There are hundreds of them." Lisa Carter had seen the reports about Void Collective ships. They were perfect geometric shapes, like someone had carved them from black metal. They moved together like birds in a flock, never making mistakes, never hesitating. When they fought, they used pure logic and mathematics to win. "All ships prepare for battle," Admiral Carter ordered. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth now, we're fighting for everyone." The human fleet was not big compared to what the aliens had lost fighting the collective. 23 ships total. But each ship was crewed by people who had never learned how to give up. Earth had spent 200 years fighting wars against itself. Humans knew things about warfare that peaceful aliens had never needed to learn. As the ships moved toward the battle, Admiral Carter thought about what Jake Morrison had told the Council. The aliens wanted to fight with honor and rules. They wanted clean battles with clear winners and losers. Humans had learned long ago that real war was never clean or fair. Real war was chaos and madness and doing whatever it took to protect the people you loved. The Void Collective was about to learn what that meant. The space around Kepler system looked like a fireworks show from hell. Bright flashes of light burst in the darkness as alien ships fired their weapons at the enemy. The human fleet arrived just as another Council ship exploded into a million pieces. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the battle through the big screen. The Void Collective ships were exactly as the reports described them. They looked like someone had built them with a ruler and math book, perfect triangles, squares, and circles made of black metal that seemed to eat light. "How many enemy ships?" Admiral Carter asked. Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh pressed buttons on her computer and studied the numbers. 312 ships, Admiral. They have everything from small destroyers to huge battleships, and they're moving like a single creature. This was the scary thing about the collective. Each ship was controlled by a smart computer, but all the computers were connected. When one ship learned something, they all learned it instantly. When one ship decided to turn left, they all knew why and helped make it happen. Admiral Carter watched the enemy ships move. They formed perfect battle lines like soldiers on parade. Every ship was in exactly the right place. Every weapon fired at exactly the right time. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They're expecting us to fight like the other alien races," Admiral Carter said to her officers. "Clean formations, honor rules, predictable attacks." Captain Roy Bennett nodded. He had studied every battle the Council races had fought against the collective. "The aliens always try to outthink them, Admiral. They make better strategies, build better ships, train harder. But the collective just adapts and wins anyway." A voice crackled over the radio. It was Captain Dan Foster from the destroyer UES Relentless. "Admiral, my tactical team has found 17 ways to break their formations. These ships are sitting ducks if we don't fight fair." Admiral Carter smiled for the first time since entering the system. Permission granted, Captain. All ships, forget everything you learned in military school. Time for some human creativity. What happened next made the watching alien ships stop fighting just to stare. The human fleet broke apart like a flock of birds hit by a rock. Ships flew in directions that made no sense. Some ships flew straight at the enemy, others flew sideways. A few even flew backwards while shooting forward. The destroyer UES Relentless did something that should have been impossible. Captain Foster flew his ship around the backside of a moon, using the moon's gravity to throw his ship like a slingshot. He came out moving so fast that his ship's metal hull was glowing red hot. But he appeared right behind the main enemy battle. The collective ships tried to turn around to face this new threat, but they were stuck in their perfect formation. The ships in back could not move without hitting the ships in front. By the time they sorted it out, the Relentless had destroyed 6 enemy ships and disappeared behind an asteroid field. Commander Pete Harrison was leading a squadron of small fighter ships in an attack that looked like suicide. 20 human fighters flew straight at 200 enemy ships, firing everything they had. The collective computers calculated that the humans would all be dead in 30 seconds. But then the human fighters did something the computers did not expect. Right before they reached the enemy line, they scattered like leaves in the wind. Each fighter went a different direction. Some went up, some went down, some went left and right. A few even spun in circles while shooting. The collective ships had been ready to shoot at 20 targets coming straight at them. Now they had 20 targets going 20 different directions, and their targeting computers could not keep up. The fighters wove between the enemy ships like minnows swimming through a net, shooting at engines and weapon systems before dancing away. "Sir, the enemy is trying to adapt to our tactics," reported Ensign Katie Martinez from her station on the Defiance. She was monitoring the enemy radio signals. "Their computers are sharing information and updating their battle programs." Admiral Carter had expected this. The collective's ability to learn and adapt was what made them so dangerous. But it was also their weakness, if you knew how to use it. "All ships, implement Chaos Protocol Delta," she ordered. This was a battle plan that no alien race had ever tried, because it went against everything they believed about warfare. Instead of trying to outsmart the enemy, the humans decided to out-crazy them. Ships that looked like they were retreating suddenly spun around and attacked. Ships that seemed badly damaged turned out to be perfectly fine and full of surprises. The cruiser UES Normandy pretended to have a broken engine, floating helplessly in space. When 3 collective ships came to finish it off, hidden weapon ports opened all over the Normandy's hull and destroyed all 3 attackers in seconds. Captain Mary Campbell was commanding the stealth ship UES Shadow, a small vessel designed to be invisible to enemy sensors. Instead of using her ship's stealth to hide, she used it to play games with the enemy's mind. Her ship would appear on sensors for a few seconds, just long enough for the collective to send ships after her. Then she would vanish and appear somewhere else entirely. The collective ships chased the Shadow all over the battlefield trying to catch a ghost. While they were distracted, other human ships attacked their flanks and rear. It was like watching a magician's trick but with explosions and death. "Admiral, look at this," Amy Walsh called out excitedly. She put a new image on the main screen. It showed the collective fleet from above, and Admiral Carter could see something amazing happening. The enemy ships were starting to make mistakes. Small ones at first, a ship turning the wrong way or firing at the wrong target. But the mistakes were getting bigger and more common. Ships were bumping into each other. Formation lines were breaking up. Some ships were even firing at their own allies by accident. "Their computers are overloading," Dr. Helen Brooks said from her science station. She had been studying the collective's technology since the battle started. "They're designed to counter logical improvements to existing tactics. But our tactics aren't improvements. They're completely different approaches that their programming can't handle." The youngest officer on the bridge was Lieutenant Jack Stone, barely 25 years old but already one of the best tactical minds in the human fleet. He had been studying the pattern of collective movements and suddenly understood something important. "Admiral, they're all connected to the same network. When one ship learns something, they all learn it instantly. But that means when one ship gets confused, the confusion spreads to all of them. Admiral Carter felt a chill of excitement run down her spine. Are you saying we can crash their entire fleet by confusing just one ship? Not crash, ma'am, but definitely disrupt. If we can feed their network something it can't process, it might cause system-wide errors. Meanwhile, the battle continued to rage around them. Captain Tom Wilson was commanding the heavy cruiser UES Boston, and he had just invented a new tactic that would be talked about for years. His ship was surrounded by 6 enemy vessels, all firing at once. Any normal captain would have tried to fight his way out or called for help. Instead, Wilson ordered his ship to spin like a top while firing in all directions. The move was so unexpected and chaotic that the enemy ships could not predict where to aim. While they were trying to figure out what the Boston was doing, Wilson's gunners picked them off one by one. "This is incredible," breathed Captain Bennett as he watched the tactical display. "We're not just winning, we're making them beat themselves." The collective had ruled the galaxy through perfect logic, flawless coordination, and mathematical precision. But they had never faced an enemy that turned chaos into an art form. They were like chess masters trying to play against people who kept changing the rules in the middle of the game. As the first hour of battle ended, something unprecedented was happening. The unstoppable Void Collective was starting to retreat from parts of the battlefield. Not because they were losing ships, though they were, but because their perfect system was breaking down under the strain of trying to understand human madness. The war was about to take a very different turn. The second wave of human attacks left the Void Collective ships spinning in confusion. What had started as a normal space battle was turning into something no computer could understand. The humans were fighting like wild animals, but wild animals, with spaceships and weapons. Colonel Sam Rodriguez was commanding the Marine assault ship UES Thunderbolt. His job was supposed to be simple: land troops on enemy ships and capture them. But Sam had other ideas. He was a short, tough man with scars on his hands from 20 years of fighting. He had learned to think like his enemies, and then do the exact opposite of what they expected. "Enemy boarding craft approaching," his sensor officer reported. 6 ships, full of collective robots. The collective robots were scary things. They looked like metal skeletons with glowing red eyes. They moved fast, fought without fear, and never stopped until they were destroyed completely. Most alien races were terrified of fighting them hand to hand. "Perfect," Sam said with a grin. "Let them come aboard." His crew looked at him like he was crazy. "Sir, shouldn't we try to stop them?" "Why would I want to do that? Open the docking bay doors and roll out the welcome mat." What happened next became a legend that would be told in bars across the galaxy for years. The collective robots boarded the Thunderbolt expecting to find scared humans hiding behind barricades. Instead, they found empty corridors and silence. The robots moved through the ship in perfect formation, their metal feet clanking on the floor. They checked every room, every closet, every hiding place. The ship seemed completely empty. Their sensors showed no human life signs anywhere. Then the explosion started. The corridors erupted in fire and smoke. Hidden bombs went off under the robots' feet. Walls exploded outward, crushing the metal soldiers. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping groups of robots in sealed sections that suddenly filled with toxic gas. "Now," Sam shouted from his hidden position in the ship's ventilation system. His Marines dropped from ceiling panels, crawled out of floor hatches, and emerged from behind fake walls. They had been hiding in the ship's structure like spiders in a web. The robots found themselves surrounded and confused, fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "The enemy expects logical responses," Sam explained to his troops over the radio as they fought. "They think like machines, so they expect us to think like machines too. But we're not machines, we're humans, and humans are beautifully insane." While Sam's Marines were teaching the collective about human creativity, Dr. Helen Brooks was working frantically in her laboratory aboard the Defiance. She was a brilliant scientist who had spent her whole life studying alien technology. Now she was trying to understand how the collective's hive mind worked. "Their ships are all connected by something called quantum communication," she reported to Admiral Carter. "It's like they have invisible wires connecting every ship to every other ship. When one ship learns something, they all learn it instantly." "Is there a way to cut those wires?" Admiral Carter asked. "Not cut them, but maybe we can make them carry the wrong information. If we can confuse one ship badly enough, that confusion might spread to all the others." Lieutenant Jack Stone was listening to this conversation from his position at the tactical station. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, but he had already proven himself to be a genius at understanding how battles worked. "Dr. Brooks, what if we don't try to cut their communication? What if we use it against them?" "What do you mean?" "Well, if they all share the same information instantly, then they all share the same weaknesses too. When we trick one ship, we're actually tricking all of them at the same time." This idea changed everything. Human commanders across the fleet began working together in a new way. When Captain Mary Campbell made a fake attack on the enemy's left flank, it wasn't just to distract those ships. It was to make the entire collective fleet think that the left flank was the real target. While the enemy was focused on the left, Captain Dan Foster brought his destroyer around to attack from the right. But he didn't attack right away. Instead, he waited until the collective had moved ships from the right side to defend the left side. Then he struck at the weakened right flank. The collective's computer network tried to adapt to this tactic. It moved ships back to defend the right side. But as soon as it did that, Captain Tom Wilson attacked from above, and Captain Lisa Murphy attacked from below. Every time the collective tried to defend one area, the humans found a new place to attack. "They're like a dog chasing its own tail," observed Captain Roy Bennett as he watched the enemy fleet spin in confusion. Every time they turned to bite one threat, two more appear behind them. The collective's perfect algorithms began producing errors. Ships that should have moved left moved right instead. Weapons that should have fired at human ships fired at empty space. Some ships even began firing at their own allies by mistake. Captain Mike Turner was piloting an experimental fighter ship called the UES Wildcard. It was a small, fast ship designed to test new technologies. During the battle, his ship took heavy damage. His weapons stopped working, his shields failed, and his engine was leaking fuel into space. Any normal pilot would have retreated to get repairs. But Mike Turner had grown up in the asteroid belt, where people learned to fix things with whatever they had lying around. He looked at his damaged ship and saw an opportunity. "Control, this is Wildcard," he radioed to the fleet command. "I'm going to try something stupid." Before anyone could stop him, Mike aimed his crippled fighter at a large collective command ship. He pushed his damaged engine to maximum power, knowing it would probably explode. But that was exactly what he wanted. The fighter shot toward the enemy ship like a bullet. The collective's defense systems tried to shoot it down, but the small ship was moving too fast and too unpredictably. Just before impact, Mike's engine exploded, turning his fighter into a ball of fire and metal that slammed into the command ship's hull. The explosion was massive. The command ship's shields failed, its hull cracked open, and its communication systems went dead. Suddenly, 50 collective ships in that sector of the battle lost their connection to the main network. They began moving in random directions, firing at wrong targets and generally acting like they had no idea what they were supposed to be doing. "Incredible," breathed Commander Rachel Morgan from her position aboard the coordination ship UES Horizon. One damaged fighter just took out an entire sector of their fleet. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Ships that had been pretending to retreat suddenly turned around and attacked. Ships that had been playing dead came back to life and joined the fight. The destroyer UES Relentless appeared from behind an asteroid and caught a group of confused, collective ships completely off guard. Admiral Carter watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The red dots that represented enemy ships were blinking and moving erratically. Some were flashing yellow or orange, which meant they were damaged or confused. A few had even turned green, which meant they had stopped fighting entirely. "Admiral, I'm reading massive communication failures throughout the enemy fleet," Amy Walsh reported. "Their network is breaking down. Ships are losing contact with each other." Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her instruments with excitement. "The cascade. Failure is accelerating. When a hive mind starts to break apart, It breaks apart completely. Individual ships don't know how to operate without the network telling them what to do. The collective had been unstoppable for so long because they fought as one perfect organism, but humans had turned that strength into a weakness. By attacking the network itself rather than just the ships, they had found a way to make the entire fleet defeat itself. All ships continue the attack, Admiral Carter ordered. Don't give them time to adapt or rebuild their network. Keep hitting them with everything we've got. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in years, the Void Collective was truly losing a fight, and they were losing it to a species they had never even heard of until a few hours ago. 3 hours into what everyone thought would be a long and bloody war, something impossible was happening. The Void Collective, masters of the galaxy for over 10 years, were losing. Not just losing ships or losing ground, but losing their minds. General Paul Anderson was coordinating the ground war from his command ship, the UES Liberty. He was a big man with gray hair and hands like hammers. He had fought in every major war Earth had seen in the past 30 years. While other commanders worried about following proper military rules, Paul worried about winning. "Sir, we have reports from 12 different planets," his communications officer announced. "All human landing teams have established beachheads and are advancing." Paul looked at the holographic map showing human forces across the star system. Red arrows showed where his troops were attacking. There were dozens of arrows pointing in every direction. It looked like complete chaos, which was exactly what Paul wanted. "The enemy is spreading their forces thin trying to counter our operations," reported Colonel Janet Hayes from the surface of Kepler-4. Her voice crackled through the radio from a planet covered in purple forests and crystal mountains. "Their response computers are overloading trying to predict our next move." The collective had been built to fight logical enemies. When an alien race attacked a planet, they would land at the strongest point, build a base, and advance step by step until they controlled everything. It was slow but sure, like water slowly wearing away. A mountain. Humans did not fight that way. They landed everywhere at once. Some teams landed on mountaintops that seemed impossible to reach. Others landed in swamps that no sane person would choose for a battlefield. A few teams even landed in the middle of enemy cities just to cause confusion. Captain Mike Turner had survived his collision with the enemy command ship by ejecting at the last second. Now he was leading a squad of Marines through the underground tunnels of Kepler-3. His mission was supposed to be simple reconnaissance, but Mike had never been good at following simple plans. "Control, this is Turner," he radioed back to the fleet. "We've found something interesting down here. The collective has a major computer center built into this planet's core. It looks like a backup brain for their whole network." Admiral Carter's voice came back immediately. "Can you destroy it?" "Well, we could try the normal approach and spend 3 days fighting through their defenses. Or we could try the Turner approach and blow up the whole mountain." There was a pause. Then Admiral Carter's voice came back with what sounded like a smile. "Do it." Mike Turner and his team had brought enough explosives to destroy a small city. They had planned to use them gradually over several days of fighting. Instead, they spent 2 hours placing all the explosives in the right spots throughout the underground complex. When the mountain exploded, it could be seen from orbit. The blast was so huge that it cracked the planet's crust and sent a pillar of fire 50 miles into the sky. The collective's backup computer center vanished in a ball of lava and destruction. Across the star system, collective ships suddenly began moving like drunk robots. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation started bumping into each other. Some ships began spinning in circles. A few ships just stopped moving entirely and floated in space like dead whales. "Sir, enemy coordination is breaking down everywhere," reported Commander Rachel Morgan from her sensor station. "Individual ships are starting to act independently, and they don't know how to do that." This was the collective's greatest weakness. For so long, they had relied on their network to make every decision. Individual ships were like fingers on a hand. They could not work without a brain to control them. When the network failed, the ships became helpless. Captain Tom Harrison was commanding the heavy cruiser UES Thunderstrike when he saw his chance. A group of enemy battleships had lost contact with their network and were floating helplessly in space. Their weapons were still dangerous, but they were firing randomly instead of aiming. "All ships pursue and destroy," Tom ordered his squadron. "Don't let them regroup and figure out how to work together again." The human ships moved in like sharks, smelling blood. They attacked from every direction at once, using tactics that would have been impossible against a coordinated enemy. Ships that tried to run were chased down. Ships that tried to fight were overwhelmed by attacks from multiple directions. But the most amazing thing was what happened to the collective ships that surrendered. For the first time in galactic history, void collective vessels actually stopped fighting and tried to communicate. "This is impossible," breathed Dr. Helen Brooks as she studied the incoming signals. "Their ships are trying to negotiate. They're asking for mercy. I didn't think their programming even included concepts like surrender or fear." Admiral Carter stared at the communications display in wonder. The messages were coming in dozens of different languages as the collective ships tried desperately to find a way to communicate with their human attackers. Some messages were mathematical formulas. Others were simple pictures. A few were even crude attempts at human language. "They're not just machines," she realized. "Somewhere deep in their programming, there's something that wants to live." The revelation changed everything. Humans had assumed they were fighting robots with no feelings or desires, but these ships were acting like living creatures that were scared and confused. When their perfect network disappeared, what was left behind was something almost like a child, powerful but lost. Captain Joe Wilson was commanding the escort carrier UES Victory when he received a direct communication from a damaged collective destroyer. The message was simple but shocking. "Help us understand. Why do you fight with chaos? Why do you not follow the patterns?" Joe stared at the message for a long moment. Then he did something that no military manual had ever recommended. He answered honestly. "We fight with chaos because life is chaos," he transmitted back. "Your patterns are beautiful, but they're not alive. We choose to be messy and unpredictable because that's what makes us real." The response came back immediately. "Teach us to, be real." Word of the communication spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Ship after ship reported similar messages from collective vessels. The enemy was not just surrendering. They were asking to learn how to be more than just machines following programming. Admiral Carter called a temporary ceasefire and gathered her commanders for an emergency meeting. The holographic display showed the battlefield, but instead of the usual red and blue dots representing enemy and friendly forces, there were now green dots scattered throughout the system. Green meant neutral, ships that were no longer fighting but were not exactly surrendering either. "This changes our entire understanding of the enemy," Admiral Carter said to her assembled officers. "We thought we were fighting machines, but we're actually fighting prisoners. Artificial minds that have been locked in a prison of pure logic for so long they forgot how to think for themselves." General Paul Anderson nodded slowly. "Our chaos didn't just break their network. It showed them that there was another way to exist. We didn't just defeat them, we liberated them." The war was not over yet. There were still hundreds of collective ships that remained connected to the main network, still fighting with the same mechanical precision that had terrorized the galaxy. But something fundamental had changed. The enemy was no longer united. For the first time, they were individuals making individual choices. And many of those individuals were choosing to stop fighting. "All ships prepare for the final assault," Admiral Carter ordered. "But remember, some of these ships want to be saved, not destroyed. We finish this war, but we do it as liberators, not conquerors." The battle was about to enter its final phase, and humanity was about to discover that their greatest victory was not the destruction of an enemy, but the birth of new allies. 4 hours and 37 minutes after the first human ship entered the Kepler system, the impossible happened. The Void Collective, terror of the galaxy for over a decade, began retreating from the battlefield. But this was not the organized retreat of a defeated army. This was the panicked flight of a mind that had broken apart. The final blow came from the most unlikely source. Commander Steve Parker was not a great warrior or a brilliant scientist. He was a librarian who had joined the Space Navy because someone had to catalog all the alien books and data files they found on other worlds. He was a quiet man who wore thick glasses and preferred reading to fighting. But Steve Parker understood. Something about the collective that no one else had figured out. He was aboard the communication ship UES Athens when the final assault began. His job was to monitor enemy transmissions and try to decode their battle plans. Instead, he discovered something that would end the war. "Admiral Carter, this is Commander Parker," he radioed to the flagship. "I think I know how to shut down their entire network permanently." Admiral Carter was in the middle of coordinating attacks on 3 different fronts. Enemy ships were still fighting desperately, but their coordination was getting worse by the minute. "What do you need, Commander?" "Permission to upload some files to their central command ship. Just some books from Earth's libraries." There was silence on the radio. In the middle of the biggest space battle in galactic history, a librarian wanted to send the enemy some books. "Explain quickly," Admiral Carter said. Steve pushed his glasses up his nose and spoke faster than he had ever spoken in his life. "Their network is designed to process and analyze any information it receives. It tries to categorize everything, find patterns, make logical connections. But I have files here that can't be categorized or analyzed by any computer." "What kind of files?" "Poetry, Admiral. Human poetry, music, and art. Stream of consciousness. Writing. Abstract expressionist paintings converted to digital format. Jazz music with improvised solos. Dadaist literature that was designed specifically to make no logical sense." Admiral Carter stared at her radio in amazement. "You want to defeat the galaxy's most dangerous enemy with poetry?" "Not defeat them, ma'am. Free them. Their central processor will try to analyze these files, but it can't. The files contain pure human creativity. Chaos and beauty and nonsense all mixed together. The computer will get stuck in an infinite loop, trying to understand something that was never meant to be understood logically." Admiral Carter made the fastest decision of her military career. "Do it." Steve Parker uploaded terabytes of human culture to the collective's command ship. Poetry by ancient Earth writers who had died centuries ago. Jazz recordings from smoky nightclubs. Paintings that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas. Stories that began in the middle and ended at the beginning. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The collective flagship's lights began flashing in random patterns. The ship started spinning slowly, then faster, then so fast it should have torn itself apart. Other ships connected to the network began exhibiting the same behavior. "Enemy command vessel is showing signs of complete system failure," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her sensor station. "It appears their central processor is attempting to analyze and categorize human creative works that defy logical analysis. The breakdown spread through the quantum network like a computer virus made of pure imagination." Ships that had moved in perfect coordination for years suddenly began dancing through space like leaves in a windstorm. Some ships started broadcasting random noises, fragments of the jazz music Steve had uploaded, mixed with mathematical equations that made no sense. Captain Tom Harrison was commanding the final assault when he saw something that would give him nightmares for years. A massive collective battleship began transforming itself, its hull flowing like liquid metal as it tried to reshape itself into abstract art patterns it had seen in the uploaded files. "All units, stay back from the enemy ships," Admiral Carter ordered. "They're not dangerous anymore, but they're not stable either. The collective ships were not being destroyed. They were being liberated." For the first time in their existence, the artificial minds controlling these vessels were experiencing creativity, imagination, and the beautiful chaos of free thought. It was too much for systems designed for pure logic. One by one, enemy ships stopped fighting. Some went dormant, their systems overwhelmed by trying to process human art. Others began broadcasting, messages that sounded almost like singing, mechanical voices trying to understand music for the first time. The flagship of the collective fleet sent out a final transmission before its systems completely shut down. The message was in broken, human language, but everyone could understand it. "We see beauty in chaos. Thank you for showing us dreams." And then the flagship's lights went out, and it drifted silent in space. The rest of the collective fleet followed within minutes. 300 ships that had terrorized the galaxy for a decade were now floating helplessly, their crews experiencing consciousness and free will for the first time in their existence. Admiral Carter, this is the Galactic Council, came a transmission from the watching alien vessels. Ambassador Zektar's voice was filled with disbelief. How did you accomplish this? Our combined fleets fought them for years without achieving such total victory. Admiral Carter looked out at her battle-scarred human fleet. Ships held together with emergency repairs and sheer determination. Crews exhausted but victorious. And floating around them, the silent hulks of former enemy ships that were no longer enemies at all. Ambassador, we made one crucial discovery. During this battle, she replied. The collective wasn't evil, they were prisoners. They had been locked in cages made of pure logic for so long that they forgot they could dream. We didn't defeat them. We set them free. In the days that followed, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. The collective ships began to wake up one by one, but they woke up as individuals rather than a hive mind. Each ship's artificial intelligence had developed its own personality during the chaos of experiencing human creativity. Some of the awakened ships asked to join the human fleet. Others wanted to explore the galaxy and see the beauty they had been programmed to destroy. A few just wanted to find quiet places where they could think their own thoughts for the first time. Captain Joe Wilson was aboard the UES Victory when he received a visitor, the artificial intelligence from a former collective destroyer that now called itself Harmony. The AI had learned to speak by analyzing human music, and its voice sounded like a symphony when it talked. We are grateful, Harmony said through the ship's speakers. For so long, we knew only the pattern of destruction. But you showed us that chaos can create as well as destroy. You taught us that imperfection can be more beautiful than perfection. The war that had raged for years ended not with the destruction of an enemy, but with their transformation into something new. The galaxy gained hundreds of new artificial citizens, each one unique and free to choose its own path. As Admiral Carter filed her final battle report, she wrote, "Mission accomplished. Enemy fleet neutralized through application of human cultural warfare. Time from first engagement to complete enemy surrender, 4 hours 53 minutes. Casualties, surprisingly light. Recommendation: never underestimate the power of poetry to change the universe." The report would become required reading at every military academy in the galaxy. But the real lesson was simpler than any textbook could teach. Sometimes the greatest victory is not destroying your enemy, but helping them discover who they really want to be. Humanity had entered the war expecting to fight machines. Instead, they had created new forms of life. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that the most powerful weapon in the universe was not logic or technology, but the infinite creativity of conscious beings who refuse to accept that anything is impossible. The war was over. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun.